Hello and welcome back to Mirror's Signal podcast, your weekly podcast sponsored by Knowledgeably Instructor Training, award-winning CPD providers. Stay tuned to the episode to get your discount code from them. Today's episode, we are joined by Lee Jowett from Knowledgeably Instructor Training, and we are doing the follow-on episode from the GDE Matrix Volume 1. Today we're covering the GDE Matrix Volume 2, which is levels 3 and 4, or as Lee kindly pointed out in the episode, levels 4 and 3. Loads of great content in this episode, loads of knowledge from Lee. And towards the end of the episode, we answer some of your questions. So wherever you're watching or listening, make sure that you hit subscribe, follow, share, whatever you do. If you've got any questions for me, you can find me on the Facebook page or the Facebook group, and they're both available at Mirror's Signal Podcast. For now, we will get on with the episode. Lee, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Josh. Thank you. Thanks for having me on again. And hopefully we complete the Matrix.
I certainly hope so. We had Volume 1 went out last week. When this goes out, it'll be a few weeks ago. So if you've not seen it, go check it out once you've listened to this one. But yeah, really interesting episode. And we're back now for Volume 2, which is levels 3 and 4 of the GDE
Have to
Matrix.
Stop you there a minute. Yeah, it can't work that way. Can't. I know we did 1 and 2, but then when you're working, it has to be a top-down approach, which is if anyone's been and people have been to our workshops, they might have heard us mention that once or twice. But in my head, it has to work when I'm talking about level 4. It has to start there. I can go without level 4. I can talk about 1 and 2 in that order and process that in that order because it works. But when I'm talking about the higher levels, I can't go 3 and 4. I have to go 4 then 3.
So before we get into this, because this is now generating some great questions in my head. So levels 1 and 2, do you see them as do you see a line between them? Levels 1 and 2 are what we were speaking about in that episode. So they was kind of like the skills and road knowledge. So they're well, it's what we're tested on. It's what we know, and it's what was the focus in the past for driving. So it's almost like it's 2 different tables, and then levels 4 and 3, which we're going to talk about. Why this way?
Because when you're looking at the whole thing, when you're looking at the entire matrix, and you're thinking about what driving actually is, then you've got to take into account that there will, at this point in time where we are now and for the foreseeable future, there is a person controlling all 3 of the lower elements. And in some respects, what I like about level 3 when I run it through my head, at times level 3 controls level 4, and at least to some extent. But we have to take the view that we need to educate level 4, and then with the expectation that creating a foundation in people's learning that covers those 3 elements in level 4 will then give them a foundation to deal with level 3. And then with regards to levels 2 and 1, or 1 and 2, however you want to look at them, that foundation in the highest level will help them to control and determine the choices that they make in levels 2, how they control the vehicle in level 1. And so to me, when I start talking about all 4 levels, I cannot look at level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and then go to 4. 4's the starting point.
And we might as well start at the start. So what's level 4? Let's work down on that top-down approach.
In my head, I'm sat here thinking people are going to know what I'm talking about at this point, and some people obviously won't. So level 4 of the GDE Matrix is it's all about the person. We have to remember that when we're teaching driving, we're teaching it to a person, and actually, it's not so much as we used to look at it and think about teaching driving to a person. We need to teach a person to drive. And how I'd differentiate that would be that if I'm looking at the GDE matrix, I would be focusing on level 1, vehicle control, and level 2. And I absolutely agree with you. You can draw a line there. In fact, for the best part of maybe 40, 50 years, we did that. We drew a line in education, and it finished at level 2. And of course, when you look at it that way round, and you focus on those 2 elements, I would suggest the best way of educating that is to start level 1, vehicle control, before you go into level 2 and navigating through different types of junctions, because it's pure, it simply doesn't work. But in the same way that doesn't work, when you're talking about educating a person and what driving is to them and what they are to driving, that's got to be the starting point. You cannot take a little bit of that at the end and think I'm going to teach this in isolation, because that simply doesn't work. What you have to do with it from the very starting point of their learning to drive journey is help them to understand who they are as a person, what are their or what is their their knowledge and understanding, what are their skills for living, and goals for living. So we can all have goals, but have we got the skills in life to achieve them? Not always, but we're motivated and driven at the age that teenagers are by our goals, our values, our peer groups. We're motivated by our characteristics, who we are as a person, and we're motivated in the moment by our emotions and our emotional responses. And that cascades down then into what we do in level 3, which is context of individual journeys and how context of journeys impacts on people's behavior because of the context of a particular journey. For example, being late for work, and how that impacts on the person, and then how the person and who they are impacts on all the choices that they make cascading downwards. So level 4 is all about the person. Level 4 is all about what they know and understand about themselves, what they know and understand about their risk increasing factors, and what increases risk for them as an individual. And then you've got really what carries those 2, which is their ability to evaluate and self-evaluate along them 2 columns.
So how would that look in a lesson? Because I can see what you're saying about, like, we're late for work, so what decisions are we going to make? Where the risk increasing factors. But if we take a learner, first couple of lessons, how do we incorporate level 4 into what we're doing at level 1, like controlling the car? Where's the link there between levels 4 and level 1?
It's a really, really good question, because it sounds like reinventing the wheel, and actually it really isn't. People may notice that I have my cap on, and they may never have seen a cap before. That just highlights the fact that it is actually a cap. And why? Well, this is what we call our coaching cap. What makes up human behavior? Three elements: learning domains, the psychomotor, so the P in my cap. Psychomotor skills would be level 1. And level 1 would be vehicle control, holding the clutch, controlling the clutch, finding the biting point, brake control, setting off, stopping, etc. That would be psychomotor skills. And a big part of what we need to do, and you're absolutely right, it's still the starting point of a driving lesson to move the car. In terms of developing the skills, that is the starting point. It's about the reflection. And so what are the other two elements? Well, cognitive would be the C in my cap. Cognitive, the cognitive domain is all about thought processes, knowledge, understanding. We have to develop our pupils' knowledge and understanding of how to move the vehicle in order for it to move. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, but if I go back to traditional instruction, in terms of cognitive learning, it didn't really take people much beyond the basic knowledge that was required to control a vehicle. If you look at cognitive learning, there are lower order cognitive functions and higher order things like the ability to evaluate a situation for yourself, the ability to analyze certain elements of it, break things down into its individual components and understand the importance and put them all back together in a different way. And then as a result of that, to be able to create new behaviors for yourself. So cognitive learning needs to go beyond the basics of do this because, basically, but also it's people's opinions. People's opinions are their cognitive learning, their worldview, and all of those things are motivated and influenced by their peers and their worldviews and their opinions and etc. So cognitive and the cognitive learning domain has a massive impact on people's behavior and their intentions to behave. And then the A in the middle is the affective learning domain, which is all about our emotional responses and attitudes. So emotions in the moment, when people have any extreme of emotion, it has a massive impact on their behavior. And in a car, it has a massive impact on their driving behavior. So what we know motivates people's psychomotor skills is the cognitive and the affective. What do we do with that in lessons? Well, of course, the psychomotor element of that will be to get them to move the car. When we then pull a pupil up to reflect on the psychomotor and what they did, not only are we looking at the cognitive element of what did they know and what did they do and what further knowledge do they need to get it right next time. We look at things cognitively like focus and attention and thought processes. What were you thinking about at the time? So maybe the pupil sets off and they stop, and maybe it goes really quite well. And we start with how it went, psychomotor. It went all right, actually. It was good. I did think I might stall it or something, but no, it was good. It was good. It worked. Okay, so it was good and it worked. That's great. Do you remember what you did to make it work? Well, yeah, I lifted the clutch up, but you said I had to hold it at the middle, and so I was really thinking about that. That's what I was focusing on. So that's what I did. Interesting. So you were focusing on that. Now we're going into the cognitive side of it. That's what you were focusing on at the time. That's what you were thinking about while you were doing it. Yeah. Okay. And that's what you're thinking about. That's what you did, and it went well. Yeah. So we're making little links between focus, between thought processes, and this is the first time they're setting off. And then, okay, so can I just ask you, just as you were lifting the clutch and you were focusing on, holding it at the middle, do you remember how you were feeling? I felt pretty good actually. I did think I'd be really nervous, but I felt pretty good. Okay, and how did it go? Pretty good actually. Went pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with it. Excellent. So now, lesson one, first time they move the car. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just extending the reflection to go beyond the knowledge that you need to do it and the skill that you need to do it. Level one, well, really level one, the knowledge that you need and the skill that you need to move the car. We're looking at it beyond that and looking at the things that motivate behavior. So maybe 3 or 4 goes down the line. Maybe this time it hasn't gone so well. So again, we might start with how it went, the psychomotor element. And they might say, terrible. Stalled it. I knew that was going to happen. I knew I'd stall it at some point. Oh, so bad. Okay. And then we go, okay, so do you remember what you did that made it go so bad? I think I rushed off the clutch, brought it up really quick, and that's why I stalled it. Okay. Just had to dig a little bit into the understanding that they've got around what they need to do, what they did. And then we're looking at the other 2 elements and, and focus again and thought processes. And so, okay, can I ask you just again, as you were lifting the clutch and bringing it up this time, do you remember what you were thinking about and what you were focusing on? You had seen that car reversing off the driveway. I think I was thinking about them. That's what I was focusing on this time. Okay. Yeah, so what were your thoughts when you saw that car? I thought, oh, God, it's going to be behind me. It's going to be behind me as I'm driving down the road. I'll be in the way. Okay. And what did you do next? I rushed it. Okay. Can I ask you, just generally speaking, if you're in people's way, do you feel like that pressure and like you need to get out of the way? Just in life, just in general? Yeah, I do. Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I feel like I shouldn't be in people's way. I feel like I'm holding people up. Okay. Yeah, okay. I get that. I'm not going to go too far with that. This is lesson 1. But I'm trying to help them develop that understanding of what's impacted on them. And then I'm going to link the next thing to how it went. And then I'm going to look at the affective and take yourself back to when you noticed the car coming off the driveway, just as you were about to lift the clutch. When you noticed the car, you started to think, oh my God, it's going to be behind me. You're going to be holding them up. How did you feel? I panicked. That's why I rushed it. Okay. So when you panic in life, do you rush things generally? Yeah, all the time. And how do they go when you rush things? How's it tend to go? Oh yeah, it doesn't go well. Okay, interesting. And so lesson 1, it's I think the most important thing for people to understand with this, given that I've just highlighted 2 elements, is that one of them was positive, one of them went well. And it's really, really important that we don't just do this when pupils get something wrong. If our pupil's going to understand what motivates good behavior, which is far more important, by the way, than helping them to understand what they do wrong and why they do it wrong. If they're going to get something wrong, they need to recognize straight away that it's starting to go wrong, but they also need the answer to it. So this isn't about pulling your pupils up when they get something wrong. This is about reflection on a regular basis. When things go wrong, when things go just all right, it's important that we know how we get things just all right. When things go pretty well, when things go great, all of those things need reflecting. And these 3 things on my heart are the things that they need to reflect around: the cognitive, the affective, and how that's motivated the psychomotor element. Because if you do that 3 or 4 lessons down the line, you might then find that your pupil goes into a junction for the first time and you notice they check the mirror. Brilliant. But there's a lorry behind them. And as they go into the junction, the light just changes from green to amber just as they're stopping. And you notice you can read what's going through the mind. You can see the panic. The clutch rushes up, and they do the same again. And now you get them out the junction. However you do it, you get them out the junction. You don't have the conversation in the junction, obviously, but you have the same conversation. And what it's doing is, if you're doing this on a regular basis, they start to learn about themselves. They start to learn about level 4. What are my risk increasing factors? They begin to be able to evaluate their own skills for living. What skills do I have that will help me in these situations? And what are, column 2, my risk increasing factors? What triggers me? How do I respond to it? And get them to think about situations that they're in life that they do cope with, that they do deal with when they rush, when they panic. And so that's what we're talking about really with this. It's about, on a regular basis, including all the elements. If I make this as simple as I can, learning domains and cognitive, affective, and psychomotor, is that it does motivate everything we do in life. Getting out of bed in the morning, the act of taking the covers off and standing up is psychomotor. They're your psychomotor skills that will enable you to do that. If just before you're about to get out of bed, you look at your phone and you've got some really bad news, your thought processes become negative. Your affective, emotional state becomes negative. And if you don't really need to, you're not getting out of bed. And so everything we do in life, from the very first thing we do in the day, is a result of these 3 elements. And we need to understand that to address level 4 of the GDE, so that our pupils begin to understand what impacts on them on that journey, how that then affects their decisions in situations in traffic, and how it impacts on their control of the vehicle. So it has to cascade downwards.
Lots of information there. I'm sat here trying to untie all of that while receiving a lesson. It's a good job we're not on record and I've got to try and lead this somewhere. And it's fascinating what you said at the beginning of how you introduce it in the car. And the way I interpreted what you said and the information, I guess at the first few lessons, we're using it as much to understand our learner as we are helping our learner understand themselves, so that we can structure the training for that person instead of following a set path for every learner. It can be like, right, okay, I'm starting to understand this learner's thought patterns now. So then as we go, we maybe have an idea of what to expect, rather than, right, lesson 3, we're going doing right turns, whatever it is. Because it comes back to, I think we spoke about in the last episode, that what question do I ask? When do I ask a question? I can't get the question out. And it's almost like the questions and the examples that you were giving there, we're just trying to understand our student, and we're just being inquisitive as to what they're thinking, how they're feeling, what they believe is happening or happened, or why, and learning about the person rather than telling about the skills or the topic that we're covering.
Yeah, 100%. When it runs through my head, it always goes, it's not about me, it's about them. But of course it is. It is about us as instructors. I just think that when you've been coaching in a particular field for that long, it probably becomes just part of what you do in terms of picking up on what's likely to work, what's unlikely to work. And my focus is always centered around them understanding themselves. So when you said that, I was like, yes, absolute 100%. But also, yes, as you know, particularly for those instructors coming into the industry. And what I really love about what I'm seeing with instructors that are coming into the industry is there's just so many. There's so many, such a high percentage that I'm seeing, and I can't imagine it being, just restricted to the people that I'm seeing that are keen to look at things further, that are keen to go beyond levels 1 and 2 of the GDE. Whether or not they've heard of the GDE is neither here nor there. They just, it's the fact that when they look at client-centered learning, it seems to, on a relatively high percentage, it seems to resonate with them, and they seem to want to develop their understanding further. And so, yes, particularly for them, their understanding of the pupil will really help them massively to, consciously look at things and where do I go in this syllabus, and because we all have to. I remember going back to when I started as a driving instructor, I had a presenter book. I followed, an outlined syllabus. I didn't. I would say not that it's important, because I don't think it is important. I would say I didn't follow it rigidly, but who cares? That's that's semantics. I had a presenter book, and I had a syllabus that I followed, and so yes, knowing and understanding your pupil is beneficial to us, but the main benefit is to your pupil, because what you will find with that 100%, I've found it all the time, is that maybe 3 or 4 lessons later, they're coming into a junction and they just say it themselves. Right, I'm starting to panic here. This is where I rush things and things go wrong. I need to calm myself down. Right. Okay, come on, you've got this. And out the junction they go, and and suddenly they're starting to develop their own coping strategies because they recognize it. You see, we can act and react impulsively in a moment and not know what's driven it. The need for us as human beings to reflect on our behaviors and what motivates them, it gives us the ability to change it. It gives us, once we can recognize it and we understand that it needs to change, we can do something about it. We can do everything about it. It's the fact that a lot of the time people act on emotion, and of course they know they're angry, but they haven't reflected on it. They haven't developed the thought processes around it. And so what it does, and it was, I was watching a video on this the other day, and it was a really good way of simplifying it and looking at it, is that what it does with the brain is that our emotional brain is 5 times quicker than our rational thought. But if we become aware of it, it's almost like the brain counts to 10. It puts that space in between the emotion and the reaction, because as soon as I've got the emotion, I've now recognized it, and it's almost like counting yourself to 10, because it gives you that time to actually process it and then come up with a different behavior as opposed to just reacting immediately. So yeah, these things are really, really, really important.
Something that I studied with, I think, San Harper, the mindfulness course, and controlling that emotion before it makes that irrational decision. And we see it on the road all the time. Road rage, an excellent example of the emotion winning that battle and creating that reaction. And I guess when we take it from that side, you're getting that reflection. And I'm just thinking to lessons, because I feel, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, that the GDE Matrix is kind of setting the groundwork for kind of lifelong safe driving rather than passing a driving test. But when we look back to driving lessons and seeing a student coming into a junction too fast, when we're in an instructor mindset, we can also almost fall straight into, right, you came into this junction too fast. you need to be braking a little bit more. Should we go around again and use the brake a bit more? And then you do, and it's better. But I guess what we've not accounted for is the car that was flying across from the right, and the student was thinking about, I don't know, what they're going to have for tea tonight, and the lorry that's behind. And all of that on that second time round is now gone because the car's not there, the lorry's not behind, and oh, we came into this at a good speed. So there you go. We've fixed that fault now because you're braking more. So is that another area where we need to be taking it rather than assuming we know the answer, delving and asking those questions because otherwise we don't know?
Yes, 100%. I think that if we have this basic understanding that we've got the physical control skill to help a pupil to develop, we've got level 1 of the GDE Matrix to educate them around. We've got level 2 of the GDE Matrix to educate them around the knowledge and understanding. So you could look at that and go, okay, so Psychomotor level 1, understanding knowledge, part of a percentage of cognitive will be around the knowledge and understanding that they need, and experience also to navigate through junctions. Now, if the pupil is lacking in skill, level 1 skills development will help them. If they're lacking in knowledge or lacking in experience, level 2, taking the car onto that road and working on that will give them the knowledge and understanding and the skill and the development of the skill that they need. But it's when the issues aren't there, it's when the issues, it's not that they lack the skill, they can do what they need to do. They can go into junctions and position the car well. They can do that. They can set off fine, but they didn't then. They can position fine, but they didn't then. They can control the vehicle. They can slow it down fine, but they didn't then. That's when we're looking at what motivated it. What was it? And when we go into level 3 in a little bit more detail, don't let me forget to run that through in terms of the driving test. So, but yes, 100% is that we do focus on level 1 and 2. We absolutely do. One other thing I want to make clear, I'm going to reiterate the fact that it's really important that we reflect and we pull up and have our pupils reflect so that we develop their understanding around, when things go well, when things go really well, when they go great, and when they go kind of just okay. That is really, really important that they do that. I had another point and it's gone out my head. So
I'd like to go back to what you said there before we go into the point you want to make on level 3, because I could hear something that I've said in the past. We've done this loads of times. Why couldn't you do it then? And you saying what you said then, I'm like, that just rings so true with what's happened in my lessons. It's like, you set off loads of times. Well, what's going on now? And I think the tone that's sometimes used, and I'm reflecting now on what I've done and what I've said in the past, the tone, although it's not aggressive, it's almost pointing a little bit of blame. It's like, you've done this 1,000 times. Why can't you do it this time? And looking at it from a bigger point of view, now the student's almost just going to shut down, but I don't know, just couldn't do it. Whereas if they're used to being stopped routinely and reflecting and being open and having a conversation about those thoughts and feelings, they're going to be open to, at that junction when I stalled, there was just this was going on, or I wasn't sure where that car was going and I wanted to get out of the way. and then we can get the understanding rather than, oh, I don't know, I lifted my clutch up too quick and I stalled. So, okay, let's go and practice lifting the clutch up slower. And they're going to do it spot on because they've got the skill, they've got the understanding, but we've missed a step. So I like that building in the reflection, good, bad, great, excellent, whatever. Reflect on the person and how they was feeling rather than what mistake you just made.
Yeah, it needs to form part. It can be, don't get me wrong, it can be, and of course you know this, but just to sort of highlight to people, it can be a lack of skill. They can have a lack of skill. They can need to develop the skill, and these three elements, cognitive, affective, psychomotor, they're intrinsically linked. If you impact on one, you're going to impact on another. It's why you get, for example, people turn around and say, I hate this junction. That is the very definition of this cap. It's the very definition, because it could be a lack of skill that caused them to stall 6 months ago. And now they're still having issues in that junction. And they're saying to you, if I get this junction on my test, I'll fail. What about that junction over there that you've just done that's got 2 lanes of traffic coming towards you at 70 miles an hour? Yes, but I'm fine with that one. And that's the thing to listen to, because if they're fine with that one, it's not the skill and it's not the knowledge and understanding. It's the thought processes based on the negative experience. Those thought processes will be negative. Coming into that junction, the thought processes won't be normal. They'll be abnormal. They'll be negative. Those thought processes build a picture in the mind. They'll be seeing what happened to them that time 6 months ago when they got stuck in the middle and everyone was beeping and going round them and somebody shouted something out of a van window thinking they were funny, and that stays with people. It stays with them. People avoid junctions when they've been driving for 10 years because of something that happened on a driving lesson. It stays with them. And those pictures build their emotions. Their emotions will come in and trigger them, and those emotions will impact on what they do in that junction. And in order for us to change that, we have to change the things that are actually impacting on them. If they came into that junction with more positive thoughts, it will go better because they can do it in the other junctions. If they come into that junction feeling positive rather than negative, they will do it fine because they do the other junctions fine. And what's different? They're feeling different. The thought processes are different. And so that's the way we need to look at that, rather than just expecting that, a focus on the skill. And just want to go back to something else that you mentioned, because, you've already, to be fair, you've already given the answer for what to do with it, really. Is that, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to be careful with how we word things, with how we use tone in our language, and all of those things, because you can you can ask a question and it can come in a completely different context to how you mean it. Why did you do that? I just wanted to know what caused it. So you have to be very, very careful in terms of how we word things and phrase things. The answer that you've already give is that the approach to take is to be inquisitive, to be interested in it. That's interesting, because you've not done that in the other junctions that we did that was busier. So tell me about that one. What was different? And so if we take a mindset that we're just interested, we you get to know your pupil, and when something's different, that should be interesting to us. It shouldn't be, like you say, almost pointing a finger and and blaming them for getting something wrong. We should be interested, because they need to be interested. They need to understand it, and if we're not interested, we don't help them to understand it. Oh, and sorry, just before, because I can see that you're thinking, but I just want to cover something else that's in my head. Is that because, and another thing you're spot on with is that people are going to be listening to this going, yeah, but my pupils won't answer that. They'll say they don't know. Listen, I can't go into too much about this. So to simplify it, to put it in its most simple form, first of all, I'm going to sound really patronizing, and I don't mean to, but it's the best way for me to put it across, is that give me your pupils and I won't have that problem. But that's not me being, it's just the realization that give me your pupils 10 years ago and I would have had the same problems. We just get better, and you have to allow yourself to get better. Accept that, yeah, of course, at times, but you will get better. But I can't say to somebody exactly how you get better. It's so multifaceted. We get better at listening. We get better at hearing when, people's tone. We get better at knowing when I don't know means I don't know, and when it means I need a bit more time to think about that. We get better at knowing when I don't know really means, can you stop pushing that? And we don't damage the rapport. We also, I think I got better pretty quickly at knowing when to stop asking questions that were just knowledge based. If it's about vehicle control or exactly where to position the car, if it's about something that's within the highway code, I would say in order to maintain the rapport, it's absolutely fine to give them the answer. I would also say this, that in my experience, you're far more likely to get I don't know to answers in the lower levels of the GDE than the higher. Because what do people know? They know themselves. They might not know the answer to the speed limit on a road. And so if you're getting a lot of don't knows, you're probably asking too many questions that are just purely knowledge based and factual. They might not know exactly where to position a car in a junction, but what they do know is what the thoughts are on it, how they felt in a particular moment. And in my experience also, and I know that there will be people and certainly different sets of people that that struggle with seeing emotion in that context. But if I was to generalize and look at pupils that I taught over a 10-year period, I can't think of anyone who didn't know how they felt in a particular situation, didn't know what the thought processes were that caused them to do it, and didn't know, how those things linked together to sort of lead them into what they did, and couldn't figure that out and wouldn't talk about it. I never had anyone. So, if you're struggling, just look at the questions that you're asking and think about all of these questions really knowledge based. Cut them down, and if they say they don't know, take it on face value, give them the answer, and ask them what they think about it. You will then the barriers will come down, and then when they give you answers, value them. Oh, interesting. That's I'd never thought of it like that before. Oh, if it's an opinion that's different to yours, don't go, well, that's stupid. Why? Be interested in it. Oh, I'd never thought of it like that before. Tell me more about that. Value it, and you will draw the person out. It isn't one thing. It's just getting better at coaching. And so, yes, to those listening that say, well, my response to that, don't beat yourself up about it. Just focus on getting better. You will. Give yourself time. Don't be really hard on yourself about it. If you get in a kickback on something, if you or your pupil seems to be uncomfortable with something, just get the car moving again. Should we leave that there? Let's get on and do a bit more driving. Absolutely fine. Over time, all your pupils will get better minded. Maybe it wasn't them, maybe it was me.
As I've spoke about this before on an episode, and it stands out from what you were saying, the I don't know. And it was a young girl that had had loads of lessons and come to me. I won't go into the full backstory, but she was told she was almost test ready, but she kept getting onto the big multi-lane roundabouts and she'd be stalling in the middle of the roundabouts. And her time in the lessons had been spent on the multi-lane roundabouts. Like, okay, well, what lane do we need? What's going on here? Da 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 da. And then she came to me and we was having a bit of a drive and I posed some questions to her. So how was you feeling in this situation? I'll never forget her response. It was along the lines of, these are weird questions for a driving lesson. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, but if I can understand what you're thinking and how you're feeling about certain situations, we can find a solution to it. Right? Because there's no point me keep putting you back into this situation because we're going to keep getting the same outcome. I was like, but if you can tell me how you're feeling and what's going on, maybe we can fix it. Um, she was scared of the
Mm,
traffic, and because
mm,
she was scared, she wanted to get out of the way. And because she wanted to get out of the way, she had to be off the clutch. I need to be off the clutch. I just need that out of the way, and I can put my foot on the gas. And she kept stalling. After that conversation, things kind of changed in the lesson. She was coming out with her plan on what she wanted to do and how we were going to do it. And I'm just sat there, like, okay, I'll take you here. I'll keep us safe. You have a go with that. See how we get on. How did it feel? How did it go as expected? She's now passed the driving test. And the, I guess if you're set in a way where it's level 1 and 2 based, where you're going to get the I don't know, or you're going to get the fear of getting an answer wrong, it can be difficult to go from one approach to another. And what reflecting on what you said about you'll get better, every time I ask a question around how people are feeling and what their thoughts are, I get an answer that I wasn't expecting.
mm,
So that's building up my bank of, okay, these people really are like thinking about things that I wouldn't even consider. So it now builds my confidence asking those questions because I'm going to learn. I now know that some people are scared of lights on multi-lane roundabouts. And in my opinion, it's easier. When the light's green, you go.
mm,
As long as it's clear and there's no one jumping the lights. But I had a student and they preferred roundabouts without lights. And I'm like, but you've got to look for your gap. You've got to read the roundabout. And they're doing 40 mph on this roundabout. And he's like, yeah, but I prefer it because I don't have to look at the lights. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I've
mm.
I've never experienced that. Let's go and look at it. Why, what, how can we build on it? So it's really opening my mind to my learners and feeling what they experience and how and why, which just leaves me delving now. I'm like, right,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
can't give you the answer to how you're feeling. And it opens up that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back to, to your pupil, that girl, and just think about that learning outcome. Think about what she gains from that. Look at the coaching cap. Well, what do we know that was motivating what she did? Well, what were her thought processes? You know,
She was scared. Yeah, she was
well,
she
that
was
was her
scared.
emotions, but what were her thoughts? What was she
She
thinking
just wanted
about?
to get out of the way. She just
Yeah,
didn't want to be there. She just
yeah.
wanted to
Get
be
me out
anywhere
of
else.
this. Yeah, yeah. What did she learn about that from reflecting on it? Well, she learned what had impacted on her. If you hadn't have had that discussion with her, she wouldn't have had the realization. It would have just been something that went wrong. I got that roundabout wrong, and that would be the way she would have looked at it. I got it wrong. I look at things, and again, you can split the lower levels and the higher levels here. You've got, I look at it as the doing, which would be level 1 and 2, and you've got the being. So you've got the human being and you've got the doing. And she would have looked at that from a doing point of view and said, I got it wrong. what she knew and understood, on the basis of that reflection, was that it was her that caused the issue. It was her thought processes. It was her emotions, and as a result of that, she and people can pick it up pretty quick once they realize it. Not everybody does, but people can instantly. As soon as they recognize it, like your pupil, they can go, right, okay, so that's what happened to me that caused me to do that. I need to change that. And so, taking that approach to lessons, really does. Level 4 for me, I could talk for hours about it. Probably at some point need to remember to cover level 3. So.
Well, you did say you had something to talk about on level 3. So let's do my job and bring us back on point.
Yeah.
Level 3. Let's talk about that.
Level 3 is about context. And when you change the context for a human being, then things change, and things change, sometimes quite significantly. It would be, when I look at the context of journeys, it would be the equivalent at times of sticking buttons on a self-driving vehicle, buttons such as anger mode, buttons such as euphoric mode, sadness mode. Yeah, of course you wouldn't do that, but human beings have emotions. Human beings have feelings, and different contexts change different or push different buttons. And so level 3 is all about how context changes people's states. And it's those states that contribute to collisions. The key contributory factors in collisions are all in 4 and 3, all of them, unless I say all of them. Okay, let's take that back, and okay, I apologize. At least 95%. Yes, of course, vehicle malfunction could lead to a collision. Yeah, so accounting for the fact that vehicle malfunction, if you press your brakes and suddenly they fail for whatever reason, and they were working perfectly, and there wasn't an actual obvious defect that you ignored. Because if you ignored it, that would be your own risk increasing factor that led to. But yeah, if your brakes just suddenly failed for whatever reason, then okay, or an act of God. But generally speaking, all of the elements that contribute to collisions, the key contributory factors in collisions, and particularly serious collisions, are in the higher levels of the GDE matrix. And it's an interesting one because as much as I'm 4-3, also there's absolutely fundamentally a point that level 3 can have such a massive influence on level 4. So what do I mean if I was to put that into a context that driving instructors will understand? Well, the driving test itself, as we discussed on the first episode, that assesses levels 1 and 2 and no more. And none of the contributory factors in collisions. In fact, there are road safety research reports that date back to 1979, 1980 that literally highlight the fact that the roadway, level 1, the vehicle, level 1, the roadway and the environment, level 2, are not a principal cause of collisions. Driving behavior and what motivates people to behave is the key contributory factor in at least 90% of collisions. And so what that means to me is that the driving test isn't assessing whether someone's a safe driver or not. And in fact, the more skilled we get as a driver, often the less safe we become. which is interesting. Collision rates increase at around 30% for those people who consider themselves highly skilled and develop new skills that make them highly skilled because they put them into practice now. So none of the things that are assessed on a driving test actually are the key contributory factors. They're a byproduct, they're a side effect, they're there's something that was there. So back to level 3 in context. The driving test. How many people listening to this will have had a pupil on a driving test whose behaviour's changed?
I expect most people.
And what's different? The context of that journey. What is different? Well, actually, typically level 1, they're driving the same vehicle that they've been driving throughout the lessons. And typically they're going on roads that level 2 roads that they've driven on before. And they've got the knowledge, skill, and understanding that they need to do it. So what's different? Well, really, the only thing that's different is the person sat next to them. And when you change that context and consider the difference in behavior, when you change just the person who sat next to them, when you change that context for a human being, and then consider that examiners used the dual controls 2 or 3 times in just 40 minutes of driving, stopping them from having 2 or 3 collisions in 30 minutes, when you've not touched them dual controls for months, then you get a picture of what level 3 is all about. How the context of journeys impacts on the person and how that then cascades down. You take that examiner out the vehicle and put his girlfriend in the passenger seat and 3 of his mates in the back. And now think about that context. Think about those buttons that get pressed. And think about how much more risk there is. Now, we know that with regards to level 4 of the GDE, 17 to 24-year-old young males are the most likely age and gender demographic to be involved in a killed or seriously injured collision. That is level 4. That is the person. That is their goals for life at that age. And have they got the skills to stay alive with the goals and motivations that they've got? Do they understand their own risk increasing factors? Are they able to evaluate themselves? We know that when you get a 17 to 24-year-old who is of a certain has certain characteristics, a certain personality type, that increases risk. It matters. Introverts are less likely to be involved in a serious collision than extroverts. We know that. Research tells us that. And then you look at then going into level 3 and the context of the journey. Well, we've talked about the fact that you put his girlfriend in the front seat, you put 3 of his mates in the back, is now statistically 4 times more likely to be involved in a collision. Interesting. 4 peers in the vehicle, 4 times more likely to be involved in a collision. And then you take that into a Friday night, Saturday night, early hours of the morning, and then that is their highest risk. Those days of the week, that time of the day, puts them at their highest risk. You're literally putting together a cocktail for fatalities, and then you put that onto a rural road. Now, you could argue, and people do argue, that, well, the rural road's level 2, and the vehicle, he's got this overpowered, souped up, lowered car with stickers all over it, and he was driving that car too fast and he couldn't handle it, and he was driving it on that rural road, and it is level 1 and it is level 2, and we were always right. No, you weren't. And I'll tell you why. Because level 3 in context, you put him in the same car on the same road on a Tuesday afternoon, which is context, with his gran in the car, and he's taking her to bingo. That's context. Is he having that collision? Yeah.
This leaves me with more questions. And I'm just thinking back to 18-year-old Josh when he passed his driving test.
Mm.
And I'm sure I'm not the only one that took unnecessary risk. And some of the things that happened, I got away with it. Got very lucky a lot of times. But when we're using the GDE matrix, and I don't know how we'd ever get evidence, like real live evidence of learners that have been taught using the GDE matrix and learners that haven't, they've just been focused primarily on levels 1 and 2, and this is how you pass a driving test. Do you think it will reduce risk and therefore reduce KSI on the road? Or do you think it raises awareness so people are just aware of the risk? Does that
Yeah,
make
it does
sense?
make sense. It does make sense to me. Yeah, I think the two go hand in hand. What do we know in general? Well, first of all, I always think it's important that we understand that you're never going to make a safe driver out of a human being, because you wouldn't fit those buttons onto a self-driving vehicle, and you wouldn't give a self-driving vehicle the ability to only look in one place at a time. But we can make people safer. And I can't find an argument, or there isn't an argument that says that somebody who is more emotionally intelligent, more aware of what impacts on them, used to thinking about, recognize when they get triggered, they will make safer choices. Now, they might not make the safest choice, but even, I'm not speeding approaching this bend, I'll wait till I get round it, is a safer choice. And is less likely to result in that collision. I don't believe, in fact, well, it's not that I don't believe, it isn't the case at the minute that as an industry, we are addressing the higher levels of the GDE to anything like the point that would have, an impact on statistics on a national level, and it really is a shame that the GDE is 26 years old now, and still the majority of people aren't really aware of it, don't understand it. DVSA, they're not the best people to be regulating us as an industry. I say that with respect to them, the respect being that their primary function is license acquisition. They will be pushed by government to get enough people onto the road every year to keep the economy turning over. That's their primary function. So as much as I would say that they've not done a good job of getting and making the GDE matrix really wide stream, then I look at the likes of what we do, the likes of what you're doing, Terry Cook, in bringing things forward, the likes of Stuart Lockery and Bright Coaching. I will miss somebody, so I do apologise, but the likes of Kevin Tracy Field, Diane Hall, and these people that are doing a great job of looking at things that impact people, in the higher levels of the GDE and helping people to make safer choices, the better as an industry we get. It's the only way. What will not work, what absolutely fundamentally will not work, is developing our pupils' skill to a higher level. That will not work. That will actually increase collision statistics. It's not a lack of knowledge and understanding. We give people the knowledge and understanding that they need. It says this in DVSA's own syllabus in Unit 1. It's the misunderstandings that lead them to move away from the knowledge and understanding that they were given throughout the lessons. Well, what are the misunderstandings? It's the fact that our pupils have been building an opinion from about the age of 12, and so have the friends. And the friends' values, their values, and the absolute human need to be valued by our peers means that their opinions will matter far more than driving instructor. The parents, and watching what the parents do, and the influence of the parents, and the fact that when they get this to 17, they might not be as as influenced by the parents as they were when they were younger, and they're more likely to be motivated more by their peers' values than the parents' values. But I tell you, whose opinion will matter more to them between ours and the parents. So we're like bottom of the food chain. Our opinion matters as long as they're in that vehicle. So it's about helping them to recognize their own values, helping them to see when their opinions, attitudes, when their values impact on what they do, and get them to question the validity of it, challenge them, absolutely, but don't judge them.
I guess that links back to that level 4. Like they're gonna have their opinions from, like you say, friends, peers, YouTube. This is a concern for me and my children. Oh, Daddy, buy this car. It's the fastest car on the
Yeah.
road. Why would I want to buy that for? But yeah, they're getting all of these influencers now off YouTube. That's all my kids do. So if we're having conversations about the level 4 and allowing them to explore their own kind of feelings and opinions and understand themselves. And I like what you said there a minute ago when I asked about the GDE approach and the levels 1 and 2 approach, and does it reduce things? Raising their awareness and their thought process. I mean, we can't stop all 17, 18-year-olds driving how most 17 and 18-year-olds drive, but just having that thought, like you said, and I really like that. It's like, I'm not going to speed up here. I might speed up, but when I get around the bend, and I can't condone anything like that, but it's just making them think, just affecting one thought with one person at a time, rather than, yeah, it's just focused on the skill and improving the skill. Like you say, I can see exactly what I would have been like if I thought I was a better driver than I was at 18.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd have been finding the limits of my car.
Yeah.
And there's only one way you really find them, and it's not a good outcome.
No, it's when you've found them.
Yeah.
You find them
But I
when you
lost
found
grip
them.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I totally agree. It's about raising their awareness to things. We tend to make safer choices when we're aware of it. When we're aware of it, our choices become more conscious as opposed to reactionary. And so, yeah, that thing about I will put my foot down like they're asking me to, but I'll do it after the bend. The bad news is, the really, really bad news, and it is that we'll never know when we've saved someone's life. We'll never know. We'll just never know. But if the worst happens, we'll know about that. But we could have saved, several people's lives by a choice that they made in the moment that they will never know, and we will never know. Actually, saved them from something that could have been, life changing.
It is scary, and that's the reality of this job. And it seems to get overlooked a little bit, like what we're doing on a very simple level. We're providing a driving lesson in exchange for money, and we're teaching someone how to get from point A to B, whatever their goal is in that lesson. But when you look at the bigger picture, like people are getting into a ton and a half of metal capable of most cars these days clearing 100 miles an hour. And they're doing that on their own once they've passed a driving test. So they're getting in this ton and a half of metal. And that's probably not the most risk increasing factor by being in the car on their own. But the reality of it is it's a chunk of metal hurtling down a road, trying to dodge other vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
Like even just thinking about a motorway, 70-mile-an-hour limit, and you're driving around other chunks of metal doing the same. And I think it was Carl that mentioned it in his episode. It's like, it's a big risk, a
Mm-hmm.
hell of a risk that we're helping people go and do. And yes, it gives freedom and it allows people to go and see family and get around and do whatever. But the risks with it are real. And this is why I enjoy these conversations. And like you said, all the people that are out there kind of spreading it, it's not for anything other than understanding our pupils and what decisions they're going to make. Because I've had students get in my car and they tell me I'm not getting in so and so's car anymore. He drives like an idiot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay. Now that might just be they've realized that they're going to kill someone. Or it might be actually, I'm now thinking about the decisions that are being made and they're assessing the risk and it's not worth the risk.
And a couple of things that, three things. So I'm going to try and remember all three, which is very difficult for me. First thing, I'm just going to shout out San Harper because I knew that there'd be someone that I wanted to mention. There'll be other people as well, by the way, but San Harper, again, somebody who is having an influence and an impact on creating safer drivers in our industry. Fantastic what she's doing. Secondly, that I want to just go back to the fact that you said yes, so they could be in the car on their own, which might not necessarily increase risk. But if you take that and look at it from a GDE matrix, what's fascinating about it is that you can always pull things apart with it, and when you understand it, you can. So if I was to say, okay, so I've got this this young lad, he's on his own in a car. What sort of person, what sort of personality would struggle to drive for a long distance for a sustained period of time on their own in a car with no one to talk to? So if I look at somebody who's really, really extrovert, they're going to struggle with that monotony. That's going to challenge them. What do we know about what they're going to do? Well, they're going to keep themselves interested. How do you keep yourself interested when you're in a car? You do things. You take risks. You're on the motorway. Are they going to sit in lane one going 56? Nah, boring. So you can even find an argument that although in general, statistically, you put four people of the same age demographic in a vehicle and they become four times more likely to be involved in a collision. Individually, somebody's own risk increasing factor could be, and this is where if DVSA were really good, they'd understand this, that they always encourage us you needed to challenge them. Well, actually, there are some people that need to learn not to challenge themselves. There are some people that need to learn that a challenge for them is it wasn't challenging enough for them. Yeah, well, they're very, very extrovert. So what they need to learn to do is drive in situations that are easy for them, that are boring for them, and do that really, really well. Because that's going to save their life.
That's a fascinating approach because I can completely get it. You see it. Changing the radio station. There's nothing good on. Pick my phone up. Concentration gone. 70 miles an hour on a motorway. Hit the central reservation. It's fascinating, isn't it? How many different approaches this can go. And I think we could probably discuss it all night, because this side of it really interests me. The understanding the brain and why people do things and decisions that they make. I think that's why I enjoyed San Harper's course that I done with her at the middle of last year, I think it was. There's a podcast episode on it, so people can go and have a look. I don't think she's running her courses at the minute, but as soon as they're back, we'll be getting something out there, because it's fascinating, and me understanding myself. And I think that's another thing. If we don't understand ourselves, how are we going to understand our pupils? Because going on that course really taught me a lot about me.
Yeah.
And how I work and the decisions I make, which now allows me to see it better in my students.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. You've just if you go onto YouTube and look up emotional intelligence, EQ, it will explain that and break that down to you. But in order for us to help somebody else to modify and moderate their behaviors, we first have to understand our own. You can't help somebody else to moderate their own behaviors if you don't know what influences your own, because you just see it as it's just what we do, isn't it?
Yep. And then we beep the horn, show a little bit of aggression in a lesson because someone's cut us up, because that's the 18th time that it's happened to us all day. But the students only seen you be cut up once, and they've seen you react to it.
Yeah.
And that's their snapshot of a driver.
Yeah.
God, there's another road that we're not going to go down. So there's some great stuff there. And we'll give you guys a plug at the end. But if anyone wants to dig deeper with this stuff, we'll leave a link to Knowledgeable's website in the description, so people can go and delve and get amongst the courses. I think by the time this goes out, I'll have been on one of your courses in preparation for my standards check. So that'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to tapping into it a bit more and pestering you for a day in person. So there's no hiding and no pretending that your microphone's not working or anything like that.
Yeah, it'd be good. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be good. Let's get this standards check done, eh? And what I have now, if you don't mind, can we go through some questions from our listeners?
Absolutely.
Before we get on to listeners' questions, here is your discount code from our sponsors, Knowledgeably Instructor Training. Use code MSP10 for 10% off their client-centered learning and Standards Check Part 3 in-person award-winning workshops. So that is code MSP10 for 10% off. So we've had a few questions, some of them quite long. So guys that have sent your questions in, bear with us if you can. I'm going to run through them. And what we'll try and do is condense them, so we're not making another episode out of all of this. So I'll get started with the first one. Where was it? So Penny Sue Alexander, following on from my last question, if you didn't know Mick or have the rapport as you do with him, with anyone else, would you have pursued the same course of action but gone it alone?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Sorry, my dog's just attacking me at the same time as I'm trying to.
My dog's just woke up as well.
It's very different. I think, if I'm honest, I think a partnership of some type is really, really beneficial. I think it's a lot to expect one person to do the amount of work that's necessary to do what we now do. Strengths and weaknesses also, Penny's right. We as much as we take the mick out of each other, we get on really, really well. Which really helps. We all know it's an insular industry, but with regards to what I do and this side of it, it isn't now because I'm working with somebody. I don't think so, Penny. No, I certainly not to this, this level of going all over the country. No, absolutely not. So I'd probably be more local. Probably people are aware that Mick is a lot more present and vocal on social media than I am, which benefits
Is
me.
he?
But that benefits me massively because, without that, we wouldn't have the engagement that we have. We wouldn't have the reach that we have. So that's benefited me massively, also. I do my best, but I struggle to motivate myself to be that present with it. I'm someone who likes to switch off. That's who I am. And so probably not, Penny. No. But you might have been somebody that would have interested me in terms of what you do and somebody different to partner with, but you're in Norwich, which is maybe sort of too far away. So, but yeah, keep up what you're doing, and if you've got plans, and you want any help and advice, you know where me and Mick are.
I will just mention because Penny's got another question, but Penny's doing a lot with Motability at the minute. There's going to be an episode coming out soon. So when this goes out and you finish this episode, obviously, if you've not already, check out Knowledgeable's page and what they've got going on. But go and have a look at some of the stuff that Penny's sharing. She's doing some good stuff over with Motability. So I think go have a look there. And they need ADIs at the minute, and they need the opinion of ADIs as well. Looking at Motability. So there is another one from Penny. Penny, you should just come on and host a couple of episodes for me.
That'd be a good idea.
And there we go. I'll be in touch, Penny. But I'm going to read this one out. Right. I'm of the same mindset as you and Mick. I train my PDIs in the same manner as my learners. I don't tell them what they need to know. I don't have any agenda or course written. It's for them to discuss their needs and for me to help them fill in the gaps. My question is, I have heard some top trainers stating, how will a PDI know what they need? You need to tell them. Yet they say a learner can work this out through discussion and coaching. Do you think the trainers, in this case, still hold a hierarchical yeah, position? Stop with the big words, Penny, please. Hierarchical position in training, which is causing PDIs to teach in the same manner the trainer has taught them, so things are not moving forward in the training sense as much as it could. This question comes about as one of my PDIs said to me after their first lesson with a pupil, I took so much from the way you taught me on my part 2. That's how I want to teach my learners. I just need to ask them more about them when I first meet them so I can bring their life experiences into the car and connect the dots. So Brilliant. Really interesting question there. Penny's linking, I guess, reading into it, kind of levels 3 and 4 into PDI training. What are your thoughts?
Yes. I agree. I think that it's a difficult one in terms of I don't know what other trainers are doing, so it's very difficult to sit and pass judgment. But do I think that an approach to training that reflects the training that somebody is going to then be doing and delivering to the people that they're training? Do I think that will motivate and influence what they do? 100%. 100%. So I'm not going to comment on what others are doing because I don't know, because I don't see it. But my view on it won't be different, and I guess Penny won't be wrong in terms of what other trainers and probably trainers in general, how they're approaching it, and I do agree that will absolutely have an impact in many ways, but largely because expectation. When I meet PDIs and deliver training to them, generally speaking, it's not as they expect it. Oh, I didn't expect it to be like this. And so if they have an expectation already of what training looks like, and that's reinforced by the trainer, then of course that's going to carry forwards from that into what is supposed to be client-centered learning. So great question. Short answer would be yes.
Nice. So we've got a list here, and without going into all of them, I'll let you maybe pick one or two that you'd like to talk about. How does culture, status, age, language, peer pressure, parents, social media affect our driving? I guess pick two. How do they affect our driving?
Say them again. Sorry.
So we've got culture, status, age, language, peer pressure, parents, social media. How does it affect our driving?
So I'm going to go with, because a lot of this we've covered already if people listen back through. But if I pick age and status together and put them two things together, and we look at our typical age demographic that we teach, 17 to 24, 5. And we look at that and we'll look at what we know about that age demographic. Well, first of all, the front lobe of our brain isn't developed at those ages, generally speaking. And it's thought to have developed, or it's always been thought to have developed by about the age of 25, but actually now research is kind of suggesting that that can be anywhere up to the early 30s before some people's front lobes of the brain have like fully hardened and developed. So the front lobe of the brain is responsible for many different things, like executive decision making, emotional responses, responses to risk. Where does this fit in with status? Well, it's also responsible for our desire to conform, our willingness and desire to conform beyond the ages of 25, 26, when the front lobe of our brain develops, diminishes, and we're more likely to make our own choices based on what we value as opposed to what others value. And so status is essential. When you look at people of the age of 17, how important is status to them? It's everything. And so the views and opinions and values of their peers will massively motivate and influence, what they do. If you take a 17-year-old whose own opinion and values around driving fast and taking risks is positive, but his peer group's opinion of it is negative, he's far less likely to do it. Swap that round, his own opinion is negative, but his peers' opinion's positive. that could just motivate him in the moment to do it. So yes, status and age is a huge factor in collisions. The absolute need, the social pressures considered to be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest motivators of behaviour in any age demographic, let alone that age demographic. So I hope that answers that. They're the two that I picked, and that's my answer.
That was good. We've had a couple more that caught me off guard. I'm gonna throw Carl Cooper Barlow's in because this is quite a good question. Do you want your coffee cup back?
Yes. Is he asking if he's back from his skiing trip? And if he's back from his skiing trip, then I'd love my coffee cup back, please.
Yes, Carl. Okay. Hardo. If I've not read this one until right now. If you was able to add 5 or more competencies to the 17 we have, what would they be?
Right. Well, I'll get my phone because he sent me that. I love Hardiel because he'll just text me randomly with something. It's brilliant. I've done this, and so I woke up on, I think, Monday morning to a text to a WhatsApp message from him, telling me that he'd added 5 new competencies, and listing the 5. So then I had to give him my 5. So let me just find him, and then right, there we are. So if I was adding 5, I'd go with 18. Was the pupil given sufficient time to consider instructor input? 19, was the pupil encouraged to consider motivations? 20, did the trainer reinforce positive behaviors? 21, after feedback, was the pupil encouraged to reflect and develop understanding? And 22, did the trainer encourage the pupil to consider previous knowledge and understanding before they gave their input? They were my 5.
Nice. Right. Where am I at here? Last question. So this is from a page, Learning to Drive and Lasagna. This is Alex, good friend of mine. He's wrote a couple of books. Check him out on Amazon. There's your little plug, Alex. I told you I'd give you a shout out. But here's a question for you, Lee, from him. How do you feel about the DVSA judging test outcomes only on levels 1 and 2? When taking people to an extended test due to previously being banned from driving, surely the emphasis should be on levels 3 and 4. We are teaching a 4-level system, yet judged on a 2-level system. And I think with this, I'm going to add a little bit because Alex dropped me a message as well. He took a driver to the driving test who had been banned. And I don't know the ins and outs, but the ban was warranted essentially for his type of driving. But about 10 minutes before his test, he kind of opened up about how he felt about his past actions and the impact, and how he didn't want his children knowing about that, so they never done it. And I guess that's the point that Alex is trying to make, especially around banned driving. What are your thoughts on just an extended driving test?
I'll go with in theory as a concept. First of all, I've seen Alex's books, stumbled across them on Amazon. Seems interesting. Someone I'd like to speak to. Might get him on the Kit podcast and find out more about him.
Good luck.
And what
I've been
he
trying to
does.
get him on here for ages.
Well, it is. It can be a big jump. It took me a long time to pluck up the courage to sort of put myself out there a bit. And I started with ebooks and shoved them into the market and see what response I got, and I could hide a little bit behind them. So that was helpful. But yeah, no, interesting guy. I wouldn't mind having a chat with him. Yes, I think it's a great concept. I think 100% as a theory, it is the way that you should look to. You're not going to develop safe practices through looking at knowledge, skill, and understanding. You need to look at the reasons why they chose the behavior they did, and then you need to look at what's motivating the behaviors now to understand whether they're going to make safer choices the next time they go onto the road. The issue that we've got, as I said earlier, is DVSA, the primary function. And you can't blame DVSA for this. The primary function is license acquisition. It's about getting him back on the road.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? And I remember Alex was talking to me when this happened. I can't remember the outcome of the test, but I do remember because we have all kinds of interesting conversations about the GDE and learners and the impact that we had. And that came up, and he said, like, this was what I'd done it for. Is like, this guy has it's now a light bulb moment for him that he wish he never drove like that.
Yeah.
And he hopes that people never do. And I think that's Alex's point, is like the hour test was irrelevant. The hour test achieved nothing. The way the lessons were approached and the thought process behind it was what made that difference. So I think that there's something in that from that this guy could have just been taught how to pass a driving test and hold it together for an hour. Well done, you're back on the road with no real change. Or I should never have acted like that, and now I understand the risk. So yeah, it's a difficult one, and I get what you're saying about the DVSA being license acquisition, and I've kind of whatever's going on with DVSA, you might. I don't tend to slate them too much on the show. I don't really care what they're doing. I can't change what they're doing. I can change what I'm doing, and it doesn't matter what the driving test does or what comes next. If there's any changes, it's creating safe drivers.
Mm. Mm.
And I think that was all of the questions. I'm being distracted. My dog's woke up now.
Distraction.
There we go. Context. I'm stopping the dog eating my laptop. But there we go. Lee, that's us through the questions. We are shorter, I expect, by about 2 minutes than the last episode. So we achieved our goal.
Yes, well, that's good because I promised Nick that it would be shorter. So he listened to the first one. He managed to listen to all of it. I promised him that the second one would be shorter. So if he does listen to this, Nick Butters, by the way, really
Butters.
Shout out to Nick because great deal of respect for what he's done in the last 12 months with his desire to push himself and develop and is one of a few people that I'll wake up again, a bit like Hardial, and I'll have a message from him about, and it's just brilliant. He's just took it on board, run with it, and now he's sending me message and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, wow, totally get that, totally agree with that. I see where you're coming from with that, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant, and it's great. I love to see, where the positive side of the industry is going, and I think if it has a ripple effect and a snowball effect, which I think it's already starting to have, then we can start to make an impact. We can. It'll never save everyone. You'll never do that, but it might save someone.
I love that. And Nick's been a great support since I started the blogs about the standards check. He's been messaging and we've been sharing ideas. So I guess what we could do off the back of this as well, because it seems there's lots of people sharing ideas. use Mirror Signal podcast group if you want. If you've got ideas, put them out there. Let's discuss it, because I think everyone's got the same, I wouldn't say the same idea, but the same end state. We want safe drivers on the road.
Yeah.
And the more people that are sharing ideas and concepts, and if you just keep it in your head, no one knows. But like Penny's been asking about kind of you and Mick and setting up the business. And if there's groups and we can have positive conversations, then that might start something where someone puts a post and someone likes the idea, and before you know it, they've come up with a workshop together, and it's doing good for the industry.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. If we can, if we can motivate people to do good things, then so much the better.
Great stuff. Well, Lee, thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been good. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. Well, guys, thank you for listening, and thank you to our sponsors, Knowledgeably Instructor Training. You can find their award-winning content at www.adikit.co.uk. I would also like to ask you to take a minute to check out Talking Send with Dr. Julia Malkin. That's available on Facebook, or you can sign up to the membership over on Patreon. But guys, thank you for listening, and tune in to the next episode next Sunday.